Item number 10 is Department and Committee Reports and Non-Action Items. 10A, a presentation by Houseal-Levigne Associates on the existing conditions report associated with the process of amending the El Paso County Master Plan. Craig Dossie, Executive Director, Planning and Community Development Department, and I think also Mark Gebhardt, Deputy Director.
Thank you, Madam County Attorney. Good morning, Commissioners. Good morning, Mr. Chair. We're at a kind of exciting point in the overall timeline of developing the new master plan. We are close to finalizing the existing conditions report, which is really kind of a reflection on what the county is right now. Mr. Houseal will be going through that. Also wanted to highlight that last night we had a visioning session with the public. I think our turnout was good considering it was December. And it was from 6 to 8 at night. We had folks participating on Facebook Live online. Had some conversation with them over Facebook, which is beyond my scope of understanding, but we're at a very exciting time. So we wanted to provide you with an update on the existing conditions report, kind of a highlight, let you know kind of what we're starting with, because it is the starting point for developing the vision or the plan for the county for the next 10 years, potentially. Before I turn it over to John Houseal, I do want to have Mark come up, Mark Gebhardt, and provide you with kind of an overall schedule, a timeline of where we're at and where we're going to be going here in the near future. Also want to thank, there's several people in attendance today that are very involved in this process, either on the Planning Commission, on our advisory committee that's kind of steering our project, as well as from the general public, military installations, et cetera. All very, very involved in this process, and their input is obviously very valuable to what we're doing. So I'm going to have Mark come up, introduce kind of the schedule, and then we'll have Mr. Houseal come up and kind of go through the existing conditions report. Unless you have any questions for me, I will have Mark come up. Thank you.
Mr. Gebhardt.
Mark Gebhardt, Planning Community Development Department. You may recall this is a 2-year effort we started on about a year ago. RFPs and the project started in January. Right now we're at the stage of assessing what the background is so we know where to go in the future. That's the plan for the consultant to go forward. The consultants interviewed you. They interviewed a number of folks in the area. We've done a survey in the past. We've had interaction with the public. All that input will come into this existing conditions report that you'll be presented today. The schedule really is figure out the past, work on the past. Now we're going forward. The next steps forward are the visioning that's occurring, existing conditions now, visioning. Then we start to go through place types, discussion of what areas are important, what's unique for certain areas, and the consultant will go into that to a certain extent. That occurs now and into the spring, and then we start writing the plan this spring and this summer, hopefully to bring forward that plan to the Planning Commission with reports to the Board of Commissioners later in the fall, and then with the project being complete, presumably by the end of next year. That's our timeline going forward. We're on time at present. We're on budget. We're trying to have a lot of input from the public. There needs to be a real good shout out to the PIO office, Lauren, and the IT office for helping us specifically with the public work session or the work session that occurred last night. There's additional information on the website, and I think you'll hear some information that we've had over 3,000 participants in a survey previously. The survey we presented, or the public workshop that occurred last night, will also be on our website and live stream. Not only was it Facebook Live with, I think, up to 30 participants, it'll be up on our website or the master plan website at least for the next 3 or 4 weeks in order to get that additional input from people that couldn't attend last night. So that's an update. I want to introduce John Houseal of Houseal-Levigne, who will give a full presentation on the existing conditions report. Any questions of me?
Do we have any questions for Mr. Gebhardt? All right, seeing none. Sir, if you wouldn't mind, please sign in, state your name, and you may begin.
All right. Good morning, and thank you for having me here. I'm going to start my own timer so I don't keep you guys past noon. Just kidding.
If you do, we're voting no on whatever
Just
it is.
kidding.
Yes, it
Just
doesn't matter
kidding.
what the ask is, the answer's no.
I'll shorten it up then. No, but following up on what Mark and Craig have both said and introduced the comprehensive master plan for the county. My name is John Houseal, owner of Houseal-Levigne Associates. We're a planning consulting firm out of Chicago that have been lucky enough to have been selected to work with the county and its residents and stakeholders over a 2-year period to develop a county master plan, a comprehensive plan to provide a foundation of decision-making and insight to help plan and manage El Paso County as it grows significantly over the next 10 to 20-year period. So what I'm going to provide is a fairly brief presentation of the existing conditions report and a little bit about the status of the process up to this point in time. You've all received a copy of the report. It's extensive. I'm not going to go through it page by page or paragraph by paragraph. It'll be posted online later today or tomorrow. There's one correction we need to make to one map, and as soon as we get that correction made, we'll get that posted online. So with that, I'm going to just sort of jump into a brief presentation, and we'll see if that's not working, so we'll use the mouse. Let's try this. All right. So this is the planning process, and in a nutshell, a planning process has to do 3 things. And I don't care if you're planning your daughter's wedding for next October or you're planning El Paso County for the next 20 years. It's the same concept. Those 3 things are, you have to understand what you have to start with, the good, the bad, the ugly, but where you are right now is a snapshot in time. You have to then say, given where we are right now, where do we want to go? What do we want to accomplish in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years? And once you've determined where it is you want to go, you have to put into place and say, what is it we have to do to get there? All right, those are the 3 essential components. So being consultants, we divided those 3 things into 9. Just to complicate it up a little bit. And right now, where you can see here, project initiation, community outreach, market and demographic analysis, existing conditions analysis, those first 4 steps have what brought us to this existing conditions report that you have in front of you today. And then as Mark said, we are right now at step 5. We're beginning the visioning, goals, and objectives process. And then going forward, the other steps 6 through 9 are developing the plan content itself. So right now where we are is the step 5, the vision, goals, and objectives. Again, we had a vision workshop last night. We had about 45 or 50 people in attendance. We had another 40 plus people participating online, Facebook Live, where they were actually able to use the internet to email questions in so that we would respond live to questions coming in over the internet, as well as questions from the audience. It was a really nice interactive. People who participated Facebook Live across the entire county, their voting actually registered on the screen in real time with those voting in the audience. So it was really nice. And when you're servicing an area of hundreds of thousands of people, over 2,100 square miles, you have to rely on things like technology to try to broaden the net of community outreach and engagement. So it's very important to us. Again, I'm just trying to use the mouse to forward. So the existing conditions report itself, the purpose of this, there aren't recommendations. This is a report. This is not a report that gets adopted. This is a report that begins to identify a snapshot in time where El Paso County is right now. Interesting that today is the State of the Region address, and what we produced to you is a document that sort of summarizes where we are as a county governing or overseeing a lot of different aspects of the community. So it's a snapshot of life in El Paso County right now. The purpose is not to be an exhaustive, detailed inventory of everything we could think of, because that's just a list. What we do is try to identify those issues and priorities that we have to take into consideration as a county as we begin to develop the plan. What are those influences? What are those factors? What are those issues? What are the opportunities that are presented to us as a county that we have to take into consideration so we can make an informed, actionable, and insightful plan document going forward? So that's the purpose of the plan. The sections of the document you have before you, there's an introduction. It goes over community outreach, existing development setting, that's land use and development. We cover transportation and mobility, community facilities and infrastructure, a section on military bases, recreation and tourism, community health and sustainability, resiliency and hazard mitigation. A lot of comprehensive plans across the country that we work on do not have recreation and tourism as a component. And the enabling legislation for the state of Colorado, counties and municipalities, as they prepare their master plans and comprehensive plans, are required by state statutes to address tourism. It's a very important thing to the county, or excuse me, to the state, and therefore by requiring counties and municipalities to address it, the cumulative impact across the state is a more approached effort to tourism. So a real quick introduction here. So far, as Mark indicated, we've engaged over 3,600 respondents in the last 7 or 8 months, which is already a tremendous number of participation across the county. So, and again, we're halfway through the process. We hope to double that going forward. But to get that level of input at this point in the process is really remarkable and fantastic. A lot of it is one-on-one interviews, small group working sessions, large group working sessions, focus group discussions at different special areas around the county like Black Forest and other sort of set neighborhoods or set areas. And all that come together to create a list of priorities, issues, aspirations, hopes for the future, what they would like to see done as voiced by stakeholders of the county, not staff, not the consultant team, not elected and appointed officials, but the people who live in and work in throughout the entire county. It was that information from those 3,600 points of contact that we used to shape the questions we used for the visioning workshop last night. So we asked people to respond to, rank, and vote, and tweak information that we heard that was compiled from their input over the last several months. So again, we're trying to build a sense of community stewardship as we move forward. Some of the things in the existing conditions report, the biggest one is you're expected to grow by over 250,000 people over the next 25, 30 years. That's a lot of people. And what this plan has to do is help to set the stage for how to manage that growth, keep what is best about El Paso County, maintain your unique, desirable quality of life as you accommodate the growth that is on its way here. And that is something that can't be done anecdotally or in reaction to things. It has to be done proactively. So you're growing rapidly. You're also expected to have about 175,000 new jobs in that same time period in the county. And so if we can do things right, maybe we can even get that number up a little bit for the jobs. And in this section, we look at age distribution, we look at past planning efforts. These are pages from the document itself. So I just highlighted a couple of things like population and employment, but we look at several different things. We also look at existing development settings. This is the next chapter. I'm going through these to sort of give you an orientation to the document because there's a lot in here. That way, when you review it, you get a better sense of what is in here. We've broken down the county into existing development types. We can't do a parcel by parcel inventory of existing land use. We'll do that for a city municipal plan or a municipal comprehensive plan. But for 2,100 square miles, it's simply not possible. So we've broken down the existing development types in the county to the ones you see on the screen: rural, rural center, managed lands, large lot and ranchettes, suburban development, employment centers, mixed use, regional, urban, military, transportation hubs, and incorporated areas like the cities. And then we've mapped all these across the 2,100 square miles of El Paso County to give people a sense of not individual land use, but development types and patterns that exist across the entire county. This is all tracked using GIS, Geographic Information System, mapping throughout the county and technology that we have back in our office. So again, this is what it looks like in the report. We also govern land use. We also take a look at zoning. There is a direct relationship between county zoning and county development and land use. And one of the recommendations coming out of the comprehensive plan will likely be potential revisions to your zoning ordinance to reinforce the recommendations of the comprehensive plan. Planning comes first. It doesn't always, but it should. Planning comes first, zoning comes second. Zoning should be written to help deliver the plan you've adopted. Zoning is a tool to help planning objectives. Zoning is not planning, but it's an important tool. So we address that. We've examined your existing zoning. So this goes through all the different zoning codes, the zoning classifications. We document all of this. We look at office market potential. We look at all sorts of residential potential for development. We look at housing conditions throughout the entire county at different price points, renter occupied, owner occupied. Some of the key findings, again, your population is growing and expected to grow considerably. We want to identify locations for growth boundaries, ensure land use compatibility. You don't want to put a new development adjacent to an area where it's incompatible and will begin to erode the property values or quality of life for adjacent areas. We want to be context sensitive. That means we're not planning in a vacuum. We have to plan for development within the context of your existing conditions and county. And then again, one of the key things is the preservation of your beautiful open spaces, natural resources, and environmental areas and your rural character. Transportation and mobility, one of the key things here is to note we're not reinventing the wheel, no pun intended, for the transportation section. You have done a lot of work with regard to this. You have a transportation master plan that gets adopted and updated every 5 years. So you look at right up here, you've got the I-25 Colorado Springs Denver South connection, 2019 is when that was done. You've got the Strong Connections Plan, 2019. You've got 2018, you've got the Pike Peaks Area Council, 2018, El Paso County Master Transportation Plan, 2016, that's being done. and updated. So you can see all the agencies, statewide, countywide, city, have all been updating their master plans for transportation because so much coordination is required amongst agencies. So a big part of the transportation assessment in the existing conditions report is to pull together all the existing work that has being done and exists right now. We're not reinventing it, but we're coalescing all those key recommendations and existing conditions into this report. As part of this report, then, we track all the vehicular transportation network and classifications, as well as all of the pedestrian, trail, bike, and other amenities that exist and run throughout the entire county. Because transportation just isn't cars, it's transit, it's airports, it's walking, it's biking, it's walking to work, it's biking for fun, it's everything else. So we have to look at all of that. But the good thing is you've done so much work already. Airports is another key thing. Some people don't realize how many you actually have in the county. You've got a bunch. And you can see them up there in the picture. Some of the key findings: congestion is an issue right now in certain parts. As you begin to grow by 250,000 people, congestion in certain areas may even get more. We have to improve and continue multi-jurisdictional cooperation moving forward because the county does not have jurisdiction over all the roadways in the county, and that's an issue. We want to focus on some of the issues regarding east-west connections and lack thereof. And one of the key things is the issue of funding for transportation improvements and maintenance over time. Is one of the things as a line item budget for municipalities and counties across the country, that the line item budget allocated for transportation maintenance and improvement is far lacking where it probably needs to be for existing infrastructure as well as proposed needed infrastructure moving forward. And then repeatedly, public transportation is coming up as an issue. It did again last night. And I know I'm going fast, but I just want to get this out there. So community facilities and infrastructure. One of the challenging things here, again, you can see all the different plans that exist right now. Water Master Plan, Service Department Action Plan, Broadband Strategic Plan, Colorado's Water Management Plan. All these are existing and recent and relevant documents we have to work with and take into consideration. So one of the things about this report is it is a home base for even a resident to get a good understanding of all the moving parts in El Paso County. And I don't think you'll find any other document that has so much in it that sort of gives you, like I said, a snapshot of where we are right now and all the variables it is we have to contend with. And this does that. It breaks down those jurisdictions. We also map all the educational institutions of different types throughout the county, all the public safety institutions throughout the county, where they're located and what they do in the document. Some of the key findings, there's increasing response times in rural areas right now. Part of that is due to traffic congestion on key roadways. We want to make sure that we have appropriate amounts of water to fight fires in key areas of the county. And there seems to be a need right now based on surveying and talking to education institution, a need for additional schools right now. We also take a look at water and sanitation. One of the challenges the county faces is, unlike a lot of other counties in other states across the United States, is you can have pretty significant development and urban intensification in unincorporated areas by utilities not serviced by municipalities, but by district providers. And that allows development to happen in the county that in other states and counties wouldn't be allowed to happen unless they were incorporated into municipalities. So that is a challenge with regard to providing services, infrastructure, maintenance, and facilities for these areas that are not incorporated by municipalities but exist within the county solely. So we're mapping all those districts as well. So again, we take a look at water. Water is a very big deal. We take a look about water supply and where we are. And right now, based by 2040, 72% of the area in the county, developed areas, is projected to exceed or meet projected water demand. We also want to take a look at annexation. Right now, the challenge there is the annexation policies. We want to work very closely with the cities within the county. But again, as development occurs adjacent to municipalities, if they don't get annexed, that becomes county responsibility. There's a lot of issues. The districts issue, like I said, is a challenge. There are over 80 districts that provide services to residents throughout the county. So a lot of people who live in the county think some of these things are the county's doings or undoings, and the county may have absolutely no control over some of the things residents are commenting on, because there are so many jurisdictions providing services. This is a bit of an anomaly compared to other parts of the country, and it's a challenge. And again, we map a lot of other things, wind energy mapping from different reports, solar energy mapping from different areas that show the potential for these types of alternative energies and renewable resources to be utilized across the county in terms of viability of application and development. Military bases is a big one. I'm not going to go a whole lot into this. One of our sub-consultants, HB&A, Tetra Tech, are two firms that we are working with. Tetra Tech is looking at environmental, infrastructure, and engineering issues, and HB&A is looking at military base alignment issues because they've done so much work with the military bases, and they're located right here. These are all the studies that are recent and relevant with regard to compatibility zones and military alignment of all the bases. Military is your second largest employer in the county. Anybody want to guess number one? What industry? Anybody? Healthcare. Healthcare is your number one employer. Military is number two. When it comes to land ownership, federal government is your biggest property owner in the county. So these are folks we have to contend with. The better working relationship we have, the better. Some of the issues with regard to them is the areas around them, land use within a couple miles adjacent to any of these bases, and the transportation they need to accommodate their growth and logistics on the base and in areas immediately approximate to the base. When you look at military personnel, civilians employed by military operations, and their spouses and families, it's a lot of people that live in El Paso County that have a relationship to. Last night, one of the things I said with the 50 people in the audience was raise your hand if you're in the military, ex-military, your spouses or a family member is, and about 60% of the hands in the room went up. So they're a big part of the El Paso County family, and the more we can cooperate with them, the better. So we map all this information in here. And again, one of the best things about this is it's all this information in one place. So we go through all the key findings with regard to military base compatibility. Again, the biggest ones are land use, development, proximity to adjacent areas, and transportation infrastructure. Key findings, we want to continue to proactively engage the military, make sure we have adequate stormwater infrastructure, and air traffic can be an issue coordinating with them. Again, county has little influence on military bases and operations, so what we can hope for is cooperation in areas adjacent to and impacted by it. Again, recreation and tourism is something that has to be addressed in your master plan as we develop this. Again, a lot of people doing a lot of work with regard to recreation and tourism. We will be picking up on and building on these previous and existing and ongoing efforts. We're not looking to reinvent the wheel, and you can see all the different plans on here. We do map some of the different parks and recreations throughout the county to give you a sense of how residents are served depending on where they live in the county. When we do this for a city, we do this with a 5 and 10 minute walk time. When we do it for something of the scale of 2,100 square miles, we do it by 15-minute drive time, 5-minute drive time, not walk times. But you can see some of the service area districts up there where people are provided by county parks. Municipal parks would improve this even more. So pretty good coverage. And then we identify all the regional trail systems that go throughout the entire county as well. And again, this is a little bit of tourism, state efforts, local, county, and Pikes Peak regional efforts that are being done for tourism that we're going to be building on going forward. We begin to identify and locate all the different recreation and tourism assets and amenities. Again, there are so many, but we wanted to plot where some of these are throughout the county. And tourism, in terms of a development perspective, you look at it, it may be an environmental amenity, so it doesn't have a big development impact. So people might want to live near it, but if it's generating hundreds of thousands of visitors a day, that traffic has an impact. So we want to make sure all these places are accommodated going forward. Tourism is a big deal. So 61% right now of county residents who live within 15 minutes of a county park facility. When you throw in their municipal park facilities, that number gets up to 93% of people in the county live within 15-minute drive of a park facility, which is pretty good. So there's also a perceived lack of safety and connectivity between some of the park spaces in the county, and funding is an issue. Community health and sustainability is an issue. Over the last 15 years, sustainability has been one of the metrics and lenses through which planning has been done across the country. That lens is beginning to shift from a sustainability lens to a health lens. As people go from being the most sustainable place to live, they're now focusing on being the healthiest place to live. It is a way to examine how things come together and function, because who can argue with wanting to live in the healthiest place in the United States? Well, you're not going to get a lot of pushback. So we're beginning to see more and more of this. Like other things we're addressing in the existing conditions report and the master plan, there is a lot of work being done by the community health department, the county health department, and others in terms of different ways to make the county a healthier place moving forward. We're building off of those existing efforts. Right now, 1 in 3 adults in El Paso County is overweight. 1 in 5 adults in El Paso County is obese. Compared to a lot of places in the country, you guys are very healthy, all right? But there's still work that we can do, and we're working with different organizations to see if we can't get some of that policy into the document to encourage you to be even a healthier place. We also track as part of this where all the landfills, transfer stations, and monofills are. There's only one monofill, it's a Tire 1 way down south, and that's coming offline. but we wanted to track all that. We also take a look at things in this area like flood zones, where the fires have recently taken place. So we want to give people a sense of where some of these environmental or natural hazards are existing throughout the county. So again, the range of things addressed are these are mineral extractions or mines that are located and plotted through GIS across the county as well. So again, this is the only document you're going to find that maps and tracks and summarizes all these different variables in one document. Almost done, hang in there. So overall, the county is a pretty healthy community. Improvement areas include obesity, poor access to mental health facilities and well-being. Substance abuse and misuse is an issue. You could also put in there homelessness as one of these as a health or quality of life issue as well. And then environmental sustainability is also one. Right now there's over 20 different companies that exist throughout the county that provide garbage disposal services. Landfills are good as of right now for the next 60 years or more. Resiliency and hazard mitigation, this is the last section covered in the ECR. When you have things like Katrina, Hurricane Ike, Superstorm Sandy, all these massive events that have taken place, the fires in California, when you look at all these events that have taken place over the last couple of decades in the U.S., it has changed the narrative regarding hazard mitigation and community resiliency. It used to be solely how quickly can you recover after an event, okay? The approach has now changed to how can you be better prepared to handle the event so you don't have much recovery necessary after the event. So it's preparation, resiliency during and prior to the event, so you have minimum recovery needs after the event. It's different. You have very robust professionals and organizations focused right now in El Paso County on hazard mitigation and resiliency. We're building off those current efforts so that we can address it appropriately in the plan going forward. Part of this might be to keep development out of the wrong areas. So if it is a natural disaster, your recovery isn't as heavy, but making sure you have the resources and coordination to address these things. We also mapped on here just so people could see where some of the burn perimeters were for some of the fires that you've recently had in the county in the different areas. And we've identified going forward, some of the issues have been identified with the other plans and organizations that we will be working with regard to resiliency. So county is prone right now to hazards and disasters such as drought, wildfire, blizzards, and flash flooding in certain areas. Emergency response planning is conducted by a joint agency, the Pikes Peak Regional OEM, and we want to improve fire response times to outlying parts of the county, which is one example of why transportation system is so critical even to remote portions of the county, so that we can get people in and out of these areas when we need to when an emergency hits. So I know I talk quickly. I'm one of 9 kids. It's kind of a survival mechanism to talk fast. But this report is extensive, and it is intended to be. It is intended to provide a one place for everybody to go to. So 5 years from now, they can look back and say, what was going on at the time this plan was created? Like, what were the issues they were facing? They can look in here and see a summary of input from 3,600 people, as well as a snapshot of almost every variable you can think of facing the county right now. We also try to identify the plans and research available. If people want to dig deeper into any one of these, we identify the plan they can go to pull that up to dig even deeper. But we want to have a foundation of understanding. We want everybody to have an honest assessment as to the good, the bad, the ugly, because we have to start with that as we go forward. So building off of this work and the input from people across the county, we are starting the visioning process. The survey the keypad polling survey that we did live last night with Facebook Live and with the audience went live this morning on the website. So anybody in the county can do the exact same visioning exercise we did last night. We're going to tabulate all these resources, and as Mark indicated, over the course of the next few months, we're going to be zeroing in on the place types, and that is the type of development and land use we think is most appropriate and where that ought to be considered in the county going forward as a first step to developing the plan over the course of the next year. So with that, I know it's a lot. I just wanted to get it out there, and I'm opening it up, Mr. Chair, for any questions.
Sure, Commissioner Vanderwerf.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Great document. This is really fantastic. Great effort. So I appreciate what we're doing. I think this is very important to do, and to do it in a comprehensive, strategic way, thinking about the entire county and all of the myriad complex issues that, you know, make up a community. I do have a couple of comments I'd like to make, though. So one of the things when I talk to a lot of people in the community, and there is often an expression of concern about how are we going to deal with the growth of El Paso County. So really, when you boil that down, the issue is not so much that people are against growth. What they're really worried about is losing the character of our community while growth is taking place. So I think it would be worthwhile. I went through the document here while on the dais, and I saw some elements of kind of the character that we have in our community, but I'm not sure we're treating it, at least not in this document, in a very direct way. What are those elements? And, you know, some things that come to my mind is a very strong Western heritage, a very strong small business climate, a very strong nonprofit climate. In the downtown area, roads that are wide enough to you know, allow for easy traffic through downtown. Very unusual, actually, to have that, because a lot of urban communities have gridlock downtown, and we don't. So I think there's something, and outdoor rec's another part of that character. So I think there's something we need to do about paying attention to the character of our community and how to preserve it. So that's the first comment. The second one is, you mentioned a lack of east-west access, limited access roads or grade-separated roads, and I totally agree with that. And I might have just missed it, but I think we're also missing at least a second north-south limited access infrastructure as well. And, you know, in my head, that's a half-circle loop around the east side of the downtown area, which can take a ton of pressure off of I-25. And there's so many people moving out there that they really need that as well. So if it's in here, great. I missed it. But if it's not in here, I think it does need to be added. And then one last thing, which is a little bit maybe more specific to my district, which is the west side of El Paso County. I think we have one of the most interesting and significant urban-mountain interfaces anywhere in the United States. And trying to figure out how to manage that mountain terrain, how to manage that the wildlife and the forests in close proximity to a large number of people. There are good ways to do that, and there are bad ways to do that. So I think that needs to be part of our planning, part of our thinking. And while a lot of it is Forest Service land and those kinds of things, it doesn't mean we have zero influence in trying to work with them. But I think something about that should also be part of what we're talking about here, because I think it's unique. I don't think there's any other place in the country that's like that, like we've got here. So those are my 3 points.
If I can respond, you're spot on all three of those. And all of those issues are raised in here and have been raised in a lot of the community commentary that we've gotten over time. Again, there aren't recommendations, and this is a sort of snapshot of existing conditions. I would agree that if you had to put your finger on the pulse of the theme that is most prevalent and consistent throughout outreach in our examination, it is that the people are not afraid of growth or of new development, but they want to protect above all else the existing character and quality of life and the uniqueness of El Paso County. I think that's what's driving a lot of people's concerns is they know growth is coming. You can't shut the door and snap chalk line and say nobody else, but they just want to make sure that we do it correctly, because if you don't get that back. And there are some unique and beautiful areas that they want to make sure remain unique and beautiful areas. So I think you are 100% spot on for all three of your comments. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, I just had a quick question, kind of logistics of this. There's still a huge public process that's happening, and we're actually going to do implementation at the end of next year. So like kind of this time next year, is that when we're looking at implementing this master plan?
Yeah, so again, the next steps will be over the next several months, over this spring and summer. We'll be developing place types, plan recommendations. We'll get into the detailed strategies for different areas, like the edge interface between the mountains and the downtown. The last piece we work on, Mr. Chair, is the implementation, because we want to make sure we have the plan the way it needs to be. Then if we all agree with this generally, this is the plan, we say, okay, what implementation do we have to put into place to make this plan happen? So implementation is the last piece. We hope to get the entire thing, including implementation, wrapped up by the end of 2020.
And Mr. Chair, implementation is a series of recommendations moving forward. So implementation isn't a snapshot in time, it isn't a day that it gets adopted. It's from that day forward. So that's what this plan should recommend. It should provide those recommendations for what we need to do moving forward to achieve our goals as a county.
Over a 20-year horizon, so it's a lot, yeah.
Sure, but what I was getting at some point we're going to be done developing the plan, and we're still heavily engaged in the public comment process there. And once we're done developing the plan, then it transitions over into, okay, now we're going to execute over the next 20 years.
Correct.
That's correct.
All right, any other questions? Commissioner Gonzalez?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple of comments. So, one of the big takeaways for me, as it was when we finished the water master plan, two comments in here. There's a projected gap in water supply. Continued reliance on the Denver Basin for water is not sustainable, and that's why we always consider and talk about smart growth and in this growth and areas that may be in close enough to municipalities where, in 5 or 10 years or 15 years to be brought into, say the Colorado Springs or Fountain, whose water districts have alternative sources of water because they do bring in much of their water from renewable surface water from the western slope and other sources, makes sense. So, if we approve a 1,000-lot project here, 2,000-lot project there that we believe may at some point be incorporated those municipalities, somewhat makes sense. We do have to be careful of those 1,000-lot projects, 2,000. I think there's a 5,000-lot project somewhere, which may or may not be brought into Colorado Springs when they are reliant on the same aquifer that every other project is as well. And so we do have to pay attention to that, and I hope that this long-term does provide recommendations to us on what areas we may perhaps not approve 2,000 or 5,000 lot projects, because our assessment here says that is not sustainable.
And Commissioner Gonzalez, I think those are very valid points. As you know, some of the recommendations from the Water Master Plan address those very concerns. And so this plan will have to fold in those recommendations as well and tie it closer to growth and how we're going to handle growth as a county.
All right, any other questions? All right, seeing none, thank you for that incredibly thorough presentation. I'm going to actually open it up quickly here. If anybody in the public would like to comment on this, you're welcome to do so at this time. Does anybody in the public like to comment on the master plan?
Any way we can go back to the slides for a second, Commissioner Fuller? Maybe if I can find it in this nifty book. It had to do with the jobs growth section of it, if you wouldn't mind, please. Let me see if you can bring that up for me. Anyways, the question is going to be pretty easy because I was trying to write it down. I didn't have a pen. In the projections for growth of jobs and people, is it marked on here where the information came from, like the source of the information, sir? Don't know if you...
Yes. Please come down.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, just because I was going to ask. I'm sorry to do that, but I was going to write down the slide. I didn't write it down.
12 maybe.
Is it the one that's scaled up? You know, the one up there?
Yeah.
If you could state your
my name
name.
is Sean Tappy. I'm with Houseal-Levigne. The source is noted in the book, as well as coming up. It's Woods and Poole. They are a national economic and demographic development and data analysis company. They do it for every county in the country, and the way they process data is to open and manage that for every county in the country, so you're not just taking it for a specific place. When growth happens in one county in any part of the country, it is incorporated and affected by all the other counties. So Woods and Poole is the source.
Okay. And I'm assuming they gathered their data from something that has to do with the national demographic?
Yeah, it's
Okay. All right.
nationally based.
I'll read it. I haven't had a chance because I was going to. Okay. All right. That's all. Thanks.
All right, anybody else? All right, seeing none.